today, I'm on a mission, right? I'm on a mission, and I'd like you all to walk out of here viewing yourselves in a slightly different way than when you walked in. I want you to change your perspective. It's a perspective that my colleagues working in SETI adopt every day, but it's one that we haven't done a good enough job of sharing with you. And it's a perspective that matters. So let's start with the fact, all right? It actually takes a cosmos to make a human, right? The iron in the hemoglobin molecules of your blood, the calcium in your bones, the carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus in your DNA, and we're all manufactured in very massive stars billions of years ago, and the hydrogen in the water in your body is primordial, right? So from this perspective, it's actually necessary to rethink what we mean by here and now, right? So clearly we're here, right? In the Imperial Ballroom, in the Hilton at San Francisco Hotel, right? And that's here in the beautiful city by the bay, right? And from the altitude of low Earth orbit, we could see ourselves as being here. And since 1968, we've been able to envision ourselves as being here on a planet floating in the darkness of space. And the Cassini spacecraft, which is orbiting Saturn, looked back and saw us here. There is a little white dot there, and that's us. So I hope you all got the memo, and on the 22nd of July in 2013, you went outside with a big smile on your face and waved while this selfie was being taken. That's us. And before that, in 1980, the Voyager 1 spacecraft passed by Neptune, and it turned around and looked homeward. And it saw us here, the famous pale blue dot. We're here in the boondocks of a large spiral galaxy, far from the center. And our own star, our own sun, is only one of something like 400 billion stars in that galaxy. And the Milky Way galaxy is here, right? Obviously, nobody took a picture of the galaxy. We can't get outside. But we can say it is in this context that we find our galaxy, one of something like 100 billion galaxies in the observable universe. And this image, this wonderful deep field taken by Hubble, reminds us that as we look further out in space, we're also looking farther back in time. And so our perspective also has to encompass the fact that we are now in the current epoch of the universe's 13+ billion year continuing evolution from the Big Bang to big brains and beyond. So the continuing scientific enterprise has helped us to grow comfortable with this larger context of here and now. It's also really surprised us with the tantalizing idea that all we're beginning to grow comfortable with is actually only about 4% of the total mass energy density of the universe. We talk about dark energy. We talk about dark mass, and we don't know what we're talking about, right? Or perhaps we don't really yet understand gravity. But from this perspective, we, all of us, are what happens when a primordial mixture of hydrogen and helium evolves for so long that it begins to ask where it came from. So, if you remember one thing from this lecture, I'd like you to remember that you and I, we are all stardust, and amazingly, we are capable of studying the stars. So during my career, all right, there have been two big game changers, all right? Extremophiles and exoplanets. Now, Alex Filipenko has already told you about the exoplanets. Hence, it was important to get the order right. Okay? But what about extremophiles? Well, extremophiles are just those organisms, both microscopic and big macroscopic organisms, that have evolved to live and enjoy environments that you and I couldn't possibly tolerate for a moment. In fact, these are the environments that we used to teach our children and our students, that these environments are sterile. No life could exist there. Yeah, well, we were wrong. We were wrong by a very long shot. Okay? Today, when we know that there are more planets than there are stars in the Milky Way galaxy, and when we begin to give the microbes and the extremophiles the respect that they really deserve, we come to understand that there may in fact be a lot more habitable real estate out there than we once actually appreciated. And as Alex has already said, now the game changes. Now the question is, which of these potentially habitable worlds are actually inhabited? So in a very bold paper in 2004, Craig Venter and Daniel Cohen claimed that whereas the 20th century had been the century of physics, okay, special and general relativity, quantum mechanics, Big Bang cosmology, dark matter, dark energy, the standard model of particle physics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, they predicted that the 21st century would be the century of biology. And of course, they're absolutely right. But indeed, I think they were too timid, because I think that this is the century where we will see the first evidence of life beyond Earth. Now, there are 3 ways that this could happen, and so I think it's a really good bet. Okay, we could discover it. By going places within our solar system and finding what we call biomarkers of either extinct or extant life. We could discover it by studying the atmospheres of these distant exoplanets, as Alex has already mentioned how we could do that, and with much more precise tools, be able to tease out the chemical signatures of biosignatures, elements and molecules that can't be there or can't be there in coexistence with other molecules, absent some kind of biology, at least biology as we understand it, on the surface of the planet. Or we could communicate with it, right? We could, SETI might succeed in finding a signal, and if we do, we will have detected a technosignature. We will infer that some intelligent creatures created that technology. Or we might, in fact, as the result of some other observing programs, such as citizen scientists looking at the data from the Kepler mission, we might find anomalous behavior. Alex has already told you that Jupiter would block 1% of the sun's light, the Earth much less. But there's a star called KIC 846852, or the WTF star. Now, really, we don't know. That sometimes 20% of the light gets blocked. Well, what's that all about? Astronomers have been puzzling over this. It's not easy to come up with a natural explanation. And if pushed to the wall, some of them might scratch their heads, or have done so, and say, well, could be some sort of astroengineering megastructures. Could be. Could be. We might detect evidence of technology serendipitously. Or lastly, I have it down there, we could export it, right? We are planning on going back to the moon. We're talking about going to Mars and the asteroids. And some people are even daring to think about going to the stars. Yuri Milner's Star Shot or Mae Jemison's 100-Year Starship study. So I think this is a good bet, right? I think life beyond Earth in this century, one way or another. So what about SETI? Well, SETI is certainly one way that we could succeed in finding life, a way that is a very important job to do, even if no signal is found. Because the process of thinking about SETI, talking about SETI, actually conducting global searches for these signals, serves as a mirror, right? A mirror that shows ourselves from a totally new perspective. A mirror that trivializes the differences among humans. And ultimately, this is why SETI is important to a long future for humanity. We need to adopt this kind of perspective. Now, assuming that they're out there, what's going to determine the success or failure for SETI is the mean distance between technological civilizations. And as these worlds have been blinking out on the screen, I want to remind you that's not only distance in space, but distance in time. Two technological civilizations have to be close enough and co-temporal in order for SETI to succeed. And today, we're a very young technology in a very old universe. And we don't really know whether it's possible to grow old. We don't know whether it's possible for technology to stabilize a civilization, a planet, for long astronomical times. But if SETI succeeds, we know immediately that somewhere, someone else has managed to grow old, and that means that we can do so as well. So Philip Marson, the co-author of the first scientific paper on SETI, had a wonderful way of summarizing this story. He called SETI the archaeology of the future. Now, it's archaeology because the tyranny of light speed means that any signal we detect will be telling us about their past. But the longevity that's required for the detection of that signal will inform us that we can have a potentially long future. And so this expansive prospect, inherent in SETI and astrobiology and astronomy, is precisely the sort of thinking that is critical to our future. And so I'm going to leave you the last words for today, and they belong to Caleb Scharf, who's the director of the Astrobiology Center at Columbia University. And Caleb reminds us that on a finite world, a cosmic perspective is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Thank you.